Hi everyone, welcome to Babylon Irons. So yesterday we were linked with yet another manager, and this time it's Arne Slot, who is currently in at Feyenoord. So yeah, stay tuned. We're just going to do a very short kind of coverage of that story and who Arne Slot actually is. So another day, another West Ham link to a new manager. As we all know, David Moyes' position, whilst not untenable, is in a precarious situation, regardless of our performance in Europa Conference, if we are to believe reports. And reports have also now linked us with current Feyenoord manager Arne Slot. So, the question probably is who is he? What is his credentials? Why are we linked to Slot? And what is the kind of the point in putting this out now? Now, one would say that to put this out now is to maybe test the water, to see as the fans' reaction, to see whether they are, opposed, whether they're for, whether they're even just lukewarm to the idea, not only of deposing or moving on from Moyes, but also bringing in someone from the outside, such as Slot, who's maybe not as recognised, not only in this country, but maybe in some European sense. But his stock is definitely rising. Again, he's only 44, so he is a young manager. Maybe not as young as a couple of that we've been linked to, such as Will Steele or Carrick, but he's still a young manager who had, you would probably argue, not necessarily a stellar career or a career littered with kind of great success, but he played over a good number of games throughout his career before going into management. Now, his management journey started off with AZ Alkmaar. He came in initially as an assistant coach, but ended up taking over as their full-time coach in the 2019-20 season, where AZ Alkmaar had a phenomenal season, but unfortunately, due to COVID, the Eredivisie League was cancelled. At that period and at the point, he was actually level on points with the, eventual winners of that league that year, which was Ajax. Only by goal difference were they actually second in the league. So they had a phenomenal first season under Slot, and went into the following season, was again performing well. By actual kind of looking at it statistically, he actually accumulated in the Eredivisie the most points of any manager in the history of AZ Alkmaar. I believe it was around 2.11, something like that, points per game, which is a fantastic statistic. But ultimately, he was sacked in December, not due to results, but it was due to him being not focused on the team. The reason being is that Feyenoord came calling and they wanted to discuss him taking over as manager for them in the 2020 season. And he ultimately obviously accepted the role. He was out of employment for a full 10 days before he was then installed as the Feyenoord manager. Now, in that time, he got Feyenoord into the Europa Conference. So he had a good, solid first season. And in the subsequent season, 2021 to 2022, he got all the way to the Europa League Conference final, where they ultimately lost 1-0 to Roma. And overall in that season, again, had a very solid season under him. They finished third in the Eredivisie with 71 points. He also was named the manager of the season for that year as well. So he backed up his early success with Alkmaar when he came over to Feyenoord, and obviously built on that 2019-20 season. Obviously did well in the 2021 and then 21-22 season. So he's been building really well over the last 3 seasons at Feyenoord. Obviously was unlucky to not win the Europa Conference, to obviously the eventual winners and Jose Mourinho. But obviously in the league, they did incredibly well, finishing third, qualifying for Europa League, and then obviously him winning an individual award for best manager. This season, they are having, again, a very stellar season. As it stands, 28 games in, 6 games to go. They are by far and away the in-form team. They have the best defence in the league. They are free-flowing and free-scoring as well. Obviously, they do have Ajax and PSV, who are also very much free-scoring, but defensively, they are rather resolute in the league. But they do play a very high-risk, high-reward kind of style. And if they carry on as they are, looking at their results, they have a very good opportunity in which to win the Eredivisie, which I believe will be the second time they would have won it within the 21st century. So again, not only at Alkmaar was he setting essentially records in being their most successful manager within their league, within the league for them in terms of the points accumulated per game. Since going to Feyenoord, he's taken them to a final in Europe. He's also got them into third place in the league last year, and now currently has them flying high in the league, and obviously currently first in the division with 8 points clear, which is incredible statistic. They are still in Europa League. Funnily enough, they are playing their Europa Conference final opponents in Roma, with their first leg obviously happening tonight. So that will also be an interesting one as well, to see how Feyenoord have progressed since that first meeting last year. And one of the other things that can't be understated is that Feyenoord lost some big players over the summer. 3 of those players actually going to the Premier League, one being Sensei, who went to Bournemouth, Malacia, who went to Man United, and Sinistera, who went to Leeds. 3 very big players that left from there, and Orkness, who went to Benfica. Again, another big player for him. But again, he's shown how good he is in the market. He's gone out to the Mexican League to bring in Guimaraes, who has been a phenomenally goal scorer for them this season. Is now into double figures, I believe, on 15 goals over the course of the season. Pierre João is also another player that he's brought in from Brazil, who to cover in on that wing position to replace Sinistera. So the money they've gone to spend very kind of economically and small kind of fees. One of their star players in the midfield, one of the mainstay players, was bought for less than £1 million. Again, he's also playing very well. But the way they tend to play is a 4-2-3-1 formation. They have Koku, who is a Turkish international. They tend to use him as a deep line kind of playmaker, especially when you kind of slow build up. They look like to really push their fullbacks on. And then once they start progress possession, start moving through Koku, you'll actually see when then start to move forward, and their other midfielder will then drop. So it's an interesting use of the way they utilise Koku, in which to link defence with midfield, and then they also utilise him to link the midfield with the attack as well. He has a really kind of flexible role in that kind of double pivot. And as we say, the midfield is one that looks to be comfortable in possession. They play some very high-risk football in that it is fairly aggressive and direct in terms of looking to constantly try and play through the lines, making those high-risk passes, which ultimately can obviously see you turn over the ball and then in transition be potentially caught out because they're pushing fullbacks high. But it does mean that you have a team that is consistently looking to score. They are consistently in positions to then counter press. So it does make for an interesting kind of opportunity. Now, the rumour is ourselves, Crystal Palace and Tottenham Hotspur are also interested, which would suggest that those with Tottenham and Crystal Palace, they're looking for a manager who can take on a project, who can develop a team over time, and we'll obviously see gradual increases as he's seen in the Eredivisie. He's obviously a name on the rise based on what he did recently. We'll also be interested to see how he does against Mourinho over the next 2 legs as well, especially with the league form and the league commitment he has, with 6 games away from winning their their second title in the 21st century, which cannot be understated, considering it's in a league where Ajax has been so formidable, so dominant for so long. Now, obviously, Moyes' position, he's still the manager of West Ham, and there is obviously always still a chance that he could be the manager next season if he was to keep us in the Premier League with a very strong end, and if he wins us Europa League conference. Obviously, a report saying that isn't going to be the case, that he's likely to go. Some will agree that is harsh. Some will say that it's warranted. Personally, I feel that it would be a good thing if he did win and then we moved on, purely because there's been elements this year that even winning a trophy should not be covering up the inadequacies of our manager this season. But having said that, should he win Europa Conference, he deserves all the plaudits he gets. He will be our most successful manager, but he's not necessarily the manager who is going to give the fans widely what they want. And many have grown up on the West Ham way, which happens to be bringing through youth, developing youth, and playing an open, attractive football. Not something we've necessarily seen consistently from Moyes, so you can understand why they may be looking away from that. Managers like Arne Slot, who have a very progressive, open, attacking football, who like to have really kind of marauding fullbacks, or at least a flexible players who can play within a kind of a very kind of fluid transition and fluid kind of situations, such as moving from a 4-2-3-1 into a 4-4-3, and then obviously moving into a back three to play out from the back and so on. And just having those players that are tactically flexible and also ones that are very progressive minded. Now, whether this is going to bring total football to West Ham, whether West Ham are genuinely looking at Arne Slot, that is another question. The paper in question that broke this was the Times. They've also been the ones that are running quite heavily with the notion that should we win Europa League and stay up, Moyes does not stay. So obviously there is maybe an invested interest in their side to keep linking West Ham to other kind of managers. But in line with some of the managers we've seen, it is an interesting one. Again, does show that we are looking at more attack-minded managers. When you look at the likes of Potter, Rodgers, even Carrick and Will Steele, these are all managers that are more modern in terms of their approach in football, more flexible in terms of players and how they're utilised in positions. So it does at least show that there is a semblance of commonality and similarities between them. I do think the likes of, say, Paqueta would absolutely flourish in a team with such as an Arne Slot, playing that cockerel role of coming deep to collect the ball and link play, and also having the freedom which to move within that midfield dynamic, I think would really suit him. And then obviously having the next key then is to find that attacking midfielder. So someone like Fornals, again, could absolutely flourish within that setup. Soufal, again, is a very attacking player. Maybe we would see the Soufal we saw of 2 seasons back. Emerson also is going to be another player. What would be pivotal is getting that defensive midfielder to kind of marshal and to help us in transition when we lose the ball. But there are players, especially the likes of Skamaka as well, who are really going to be suited to his style should he come in. So it's an interesting one. Whether or not I find much value in it at this point, not really. Whilst Moyes is the manager, there's not really much value in it. But it is interesting that we seem to be looking for a very particular profile. We are looking at younger managers as well. So, yeah, I guess we'll see what the summer comes. I do think that this would be a really interesting choice. One that I think fans would get on board with, especially if he gets those players ticking as I would hope he would. And I think his style would suit many of our players. And I include that with the new players and his ability to, again, integrate. Obviously, there's always concern because it's the Eredivisie. It's a much lower standard, we would argue, than the Premier League. But his ability to come in as a relative unknown over the last few years and to take AZ Alkmaar to almost to the pinnacle of the Eredivisie within his first season, and to within 3 years take Feyenoord to the point where they are in line to win their second championship is an incredible feat. And as I say, Europa Conference final last season, still on course for a final this year. provided they can navigate the tricky tie against Roma. It's an interesting one, and one that could bring some football that West Ham fans have been craving for a long time. But if he comes in, if the interest becomes firmer and we see a bit more, then obviously we'll follow this up with a more in-depth view of how he plays and so on. But until then, let's hope we do well tonight in our Conference League game against Ghent. We progress then into, at least to put us in a position to progress into the next round. And yeah, then we can start to concentrate on the league and our finishing, and then start to think about our long-term future and whether David Moyes is part of that future or not. My personal opinion, we should move on. I understand those that want to keep with him, but I do think if we want to have a long-term success, I do feel that we need to adapt as a club as a whole. And Moyes has laid down some brilliant foundations. It's now time to build on that and to take that on to another stage. And Arne Slot could be one of those potential people that could do that. But until we meet again, which will be on our review of tonight's game, everyone stay safe, have fun. If you also like this video, please do subscribe, and let's hope that we get 3 points tonight. Sorry, not 3 points, the goals that we need to win tonight, and we can then start our progression in the Europa Conference League. But again, everyone, thanks for watching. Please do please do subscribe, and as ever, for all of you out there, come on, you Irons.